Hello gamers, Pet here. Welcome to my honest and spoiler-free Witcher 3 review. Hopefully after watching this review we will be able to form an opinion if this is a game you want to purchase or not. First of all, this Witcher 3 is the game that actually allowed me to play a game. And what I want to say with this is that I usually play games as a reviewer or a wannabe game designer. I focus and notice a lot of extra details, and I can't really enjoy the game that much because my mind is always having ideas. So like I have to say that in the review. I have to mention that. I'm thinking about sentences like, yeah, I should really mention this thing. With Witcher 3, it finally allowed me to focus on the game because the world is so alive that I finally managed to get soaked into the world. As you might have figured it out, I enjoy this game a lot, but don't worry, I will try to go objectively over all the aspects of the game and why I think this is a great game. Witcher 3 is the third game in the Witcher series, like the game is based on some books, but it's not really required for you to read them in order to enjoy this game. It's also not really required for you to play the first two games of the series, but in a way it's a bit recommended just so you will get more immersed into the game. I first played Witcher 1 sometimes in 2010, Witcher 2 in 2011 when it came out. I'm a bit familiar with the universe, but there are a lot of details I don't really remember. In Witcher 3 you play the role of a witcher named Geralt of Rivia. He's the hero of the series. What's great about Witcher 3 in particular is that you are not some kind of hero that is going to save over the world. You don't have superpowers. You are an actual witcher, which is actually a job. You are a monster hunter. People hire you to kill monsters. You're actually going to do that a lot in this game, and the way the game is doing that, it makes it feel organic. Story-wise, Witcher 3 focuses on you finding Ciri. She's a girl that was trained as a witcher, she's the ward of Geralt, and she's more like a daughter to him. And she has the old blood in her, and that's why the Wild Hunt is chasing her. You will spend a lot of time looking for her. You know some places where she was, and you will go to those places in order for you to try to find out. So basically the main core of the story is you trying to put the puzzle pieces of the story of what Ciri was doing just so you can, find her and protect her from the Wild Hunt. While you look for her, you will encounter various interesting characters. You will do plenty of interesting quests, and you will take various Witcher contracts because after all you are a Witcher, there are monsters in the world, and you will need the gold.
What now, you piece of filth?
What's great about this is how the questing has been made. There is a lot of content out there. I remember spending a lot of hours in the city of Novigrad doing various quests. After some time I got a little bit tired of the city, so I just decided to do some Witcher contracts in the wilderness. Bam! I was in the woods, I was killing drowners again. It was nice to go outside. There were no quests where I have to gather X plants or do boring quests like that. Every quest was an actual quest, a mission that had a purpose. It made sense. Even the side quests had good characters, a good chain of events, and so on. The only quest that might seem repetitive might be the Witcher contracts, but even those had a purpose. As I've said, you are a Witcher, you need the gold, and people need your help. Usually the Witcher contracts were like this. You go to a town and read the notice board. You take the notice with a quest, you go to the dude, he tells you his problem, and then you go to that area. In the area you have to use your Witcher senses to look for clues. A lot of the times you are following footsteps, various clues, or the scent of a monster. If you look at the mechanics you might think, yeah, everything is similar. I mean, it's the same, right? It's following the same pattern. The thing is that there were a lot of Witcher contracts where I was a bit surprised on what I found. Was it a wraith of a dead lover who came back to haunt them? Sure. You will spend time lifting the curse. Sure, that's what a Witcher does, and you doing those things again and again makes you human. It makes you feel average, ordinary. Yeah, sure, you are a badass. You have 2 swords and some sigil powers because you're a Witcher, but you are not immortal. Now, depending on the difficulty you play, things will be a lot different. At higher difficulties, things really shine. You really fear your lack of immortality. After finishing the game, I decided to start a new game on maximum difficulty. I actually died at the first pack of goals. This really made me appreciate the combat. It made me think before I act. It made me analyze the monster I'm fighting, which in a way it's exactly what a Witcher should do. You have these bestiary entries where you can read more about the monsters you encounter. You will be able to read about the monster themselves, like a little bit of the story, where they come from. You will be able to see their weaknesses, meaning that you will be able to see the sigils that make them vulnerable, or the oils that you have to apply to your swords in order to deal extra damage to those kind of monsters. Again, in lower difficulties, those things happen, but you could easily ignore them. I played on the second difficulty and there were a lot of stuff I haven't used that much. However, there was a Witcher contract where I simply couldn't kill the monster because I was used on just clicking the mouse around and not use brain. The solution was kind of simple. I had to use the magic sigil that was placing some kind of magic circle on the ground. If I was damaging the wraith in that circle, she will receive damage. I mean, the solution was there in front of my face, but because I wasn't really looking for a challenge, I wasn't really using brain. The combat is much better in Witcher 3, but it really depends on the difficulty you are playing. And by the way, when Witcher 2 came out, it had a really annoying problem with the combat by the fact that the character always wanted to finish the animation before he could start a new action. That got fixed later anyway, but I just have to mention that in Witcher 3 there is no problem like that. The combat is very fluid and very fun. But again, I'm going to repeat myself. It all depends on the difficulty you are playing on. Those later difficulties really force you to think on your approach. They force you to craft oils and then they force you to use potions. You will be able to craft various oils that you can apply to your sword. Depending on the type of oil, you will deal more damage to the monsters that the oil is supposed to deal more damage. You will be able to craft various bombs and you will be able to craft various potions. Those potions really enhance your powers and the way you might approach combat. I mainly used a potion that allowed me to hit harder and a potion that was regenerating my life. But there are a lot of other potions. There is a potion that allows you to see in the dark, a potion that allows you to breathe longer while underwater. There is a potion that is resetting your toxicity level because a Witcher can only use a couple of potions before his toxicity is to a maximum, and then you can't use potions. So using that potion that resets your toxicity means that you will be able to have more potions in a way. A new thing in Witcher 3 is that you don't constantly need to craft the same potion again and again. You only have to do it once. Every time you meditate, your potions and bombs will refill if you have some alcohol in your inventory. And this is a great mechanic because it allows me to actually walk straight in the woods. And what I mean by that is that whenever I was walking in the world, I was always walking towards the next plant just because I have to take that plant. This was a nice solution to the classic RPG problem where the character has to, pick up everything because he might need it later. Besides potions, oils, and bombs, you will also be able to get crafting recipes that will allow you to go to a blacksmith or an armor smith to craft weapons and armor for you. Another cool thing is that they made it that Witcher gear cannot be purchased directly. There are a couple of quests that will allow you to craft 3 particular Witcher armors: the Cat's-Skull armor, the Griffin armor, and the Ursine armor. I personally went for the Cat's-Skull because it was light armor and it was also the first quest I unlocked. I remember trying for 2 hours to get all the crafting recipes and then gather all the materials to craft the armor. But when I finally done it, and my Witcher was actually looking like a Witcher, it had a very cool feeling of accomplishment. All the potion, witcher armors, and bombs can be upgraded to a higher version of themselves. So you have the normal version, the enhanced version, and the superior version. So once I got my default cat school witcher armor, I was able to upgrade the same armor to a better version. Now let's talk a little bit about the graphics and about the world. I mean, yeah, if you look closely at the vegetation, you might think this does not really look that good, but you have to see the overall picture, and you will be impressed. Then, even after hours and hours of playing Witcher 3, I was still amazed on how beautiful the game looked. I love how the light was coming down the trees when I was in the forest. I love how beautiful the sunrise was, or how beautiful the sunset was. Just a small note: the recordings you see are not really maxed out. I only had I had to get a couple of settings a bit lower, like shadow and the foliage, or however it's called. I also didn't use NVIDIA Hairworks. And another thing you need to remember is that the recording was encoded, and then it was encoded during editing, and then YouTube re-encoded the whole thing again. But the game looks simply amazing when you play it. The world is very detailed. Besides the living world, with people doing various stuff, you will see a lot of beautiful scenes: bridge over river, flowers on the fields, forests, caves, underwater stuff. The world is really beautiful made. There are a lot of secrets around the map, and there were a couple of times when I was surprised of what I found. Not only that, but there are also points of interest where you will be able to find monster nests or various treasure. It really pays off to explore, especially if you are playing on a higher difficulty.
Served at the Lord's Manor together, where the Black Army's encamped now. He was a stable hand, I was the Lord's hunter. But that was before. Well,
one thing that I have to add, the world of Witcher 3 is a bit different than the world of other open world games. The whole storyline was also built differently. For example, other RPGs, when you go to a new town, you were really trying to talk to everyone to find, in order to find new quests, where you were trying to get into people's houses without the owner noticing you, so you can steal, their chest. And when you were finally doing that, you had like a small feeling of accomplishment, right? You don't have this here, but that's okay. Some people might not like this, and some people might not like that you see an exclamation mark above a dude's head. And I can understand that on how some hardcore RPG guys might think that they might be turned off by this, but if you are one of those guys that is refusing to play this game because of that, sorry to say it, but you're an idiot. I mean, you are going to miss the best, well, maybe one of the best open world games out there. You are going to miss a beautiful looking game and a beautiful looking world because of some small detail. Witcher 3 does what it does well, so this small RPG mechanic, hardcore RPG mechanic really becomes pointless. Another thing that I have to add, Witcher 2 had this small in-game game where you were playing dice. Here they have Gwent. And I spent hours and hours on playing Gwent. I actually tried to get all the cards, and then whenever I was finding a new innkeeper or whenever a dude that I had the option to play Gwent, I was playing Gwent with him until I actually had a really powerful deck. I will talk about Gwent in another separate video. I'm preparing to do a series of videos on various card games, TCG, CCG games for PC, iPad, and even physical card games, because I have a passion for card games and board games. But again, I will do a separate video for Gwent. But man, Gwent, I was dreaming Gwent. I was I was dreaming Witcher in general too, but Gwent, it was so amazing for the first couple of good hours. Now, ending this review, I've enjoyed this game a lot. I have 75 hours into this game, and you know how it is when you play games that are longer. At some point, fatigue sets in. You basically I just want to finish the game. I kind of don't want to move around. The first time this happened, it was about 50 hours into the game, which is a lot. But then I just decided to move the areas and just do the main quest again, and then I you know, that fatigue went away, and I went back on doing some side quests again, and I managed to immerse myself into the world. But without spoiling you, you can really talk a lot about Witcher 3 and what it does great. And you can, I don't want to spoil you, but there were missions where like, why, nice music. The music is really compensating what I'm seeing right now. There were a lot of, you know, the voice setting was incredible, and the scenes on how the characters interacting to themselves was, you know, very enjoyable. Now, Witcher 2, for example, it was more of a dialogue-based game and less open world. You do have a lot of dialogue here. You will do a lot of watching on how the characters talk, and then you will ask questions to progress, you know, the dialogue. And some people might not like that. But the thing is that if you just want to mess around, you can do that. I mean, just do quests, just do Witcher stuff, and just move around, just explore. You can do that. It's because the world is so big and it's so open world, you don't feel constrained that you really have to watch all those huge cinematics. I mean, there were cinematics that were like, well, not cinematics, dialogues that were like, you know, 5 minutes long, and I was asking the dude, he was answering me back, and so on. Good thing is that you can just, you know, press space and you can skip that particular line. And sometimes it was like I was reading the subtitle much faster than the character was talking, so I was just hitting space, because, as I said, that fatigue set in a little bit, and I was like, yeah. I mean, you need this monster killed. I know. Just let me go there. Of course, I haven't done this during the main story, but I've done it on some small characters and, you know, other stuff like that. So overall, I've enjoyed this game a lot. I mean, a lot. I love how I was walking the world. I love how the small towns were there and they felt alive. I love how the grass was there, the river was, you know, there was a bridge over a river, and I was just mesmerized by how beautiful the world is. And even when you have the city of, you know, of Novigrad, it was beautiful, and how the buildings were made, the architecture of the whole thing, and even the interiors of some of the buildings where you can actually go in. It was beautiful. Not only that, but there were various small books that you can read more. They weren't long, you know. Book was in an item that where you double click the book, you will see a small story. It wasn't, you know, like huge like some games like in Morrowind when you had a short story of 20 pages or, you know, stuff like that. But it was interesting for you to become more immersed into the game, into this world, because it was a living world. So tell me your opinion, guys. What did you think about this game? For how many hours have you played this game? Do you like Gwent? Fun times. I'm really happy that Witcher 3 came out. I'm really excited. I'm really waiting for the other DLCs because I'm curious to see what's going to happen. I really like that the story was human. It was saving over the world and, you know, other stuff like that. It was progression. You were doing what you had to do. You had characters. You had your friends that you were, you know, gathering together. You had to save a dear friend of yours that you were saving in the past, and, you know, so on. So anyway, thank you guys for watching this video. I hope this review was useful to you. I do really recommend you to play Witcher 3, even if you don't really like RPG games, because the world is so immersive that you can really get soaked into this world. So anyway, thank you guys for watching this. See you soon. Goodbye.